Hey, what's going on? This week, we're going to do an article for English class that has a lot to do with science. So, we're going to try to mix a little science and we're going to try to mix a little ELA. So, there are some pretty difficult words in here. I think anytime you deal with science, you're going to be dealing with some difficult words. So, we'll get back to the poetry unit, but we're just going to take a break and do a little science related stuff. And what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about ferrets. So I have an article here, and it's about ferrets, super cute animal, and cloning. And we're going to learn a little bit about what cloning means. And the title of this article, it'll be interesting if I can get through this reading of this article because I just started recording and now I'm coughing. Allergies. So the title of this article is "This Ferret's Twin Lived More Than 30 Years Ago." How is that possible? So it's possible. We're going to find out. So there was a ferret that lived 30 years ago and its twin was just recently born. So let me make this bigger here. I'll make myself smaller. I'll put on my glasses so I can read. And we'll meet Elizabeth Ann. And this comes from CBC Kids News. There's a link on Google Classroom so you can get to this. But let's take a look at this picture. Super cute. This is Elizabeth Ann, the first cloned black-footed ferret and first cloned U.S. endangered species. So I think most people I think would know endangered species, right? Those are animals that are threatened to become extinct. So there are some animals that, whatever, it could be our fault. It could be just nature, but there are some animals that are being threatened to go extinct, to no longer exist. And apparently this is one of them. And we're going to find out how maybe cloning can save this species, the black-footed ferret. And the ferret's name is Elizabeth Ann. Elizabeth Ann cloned to help her species. A ferret that died more than 30 years ago is getting a second chance at life. Well, sort of. More precisely, an exact replica of that ferret has been brought to life. So those are two words that are pretty tough. We'll be going over the vocabulary for those, but precisely and replica. American scientists have cloned an endangered species native to the U.S. called the black-footed ferret. The clone, named Elizabeth Ann, was made to help the dwindling ferret species survive by increasing something called genetic diversity. But before we get to that, what the heck is a clone and how are they made? Clones are two living things that have the exact same genes, just like identical twins. Clones of animals are made in a lab by taking cells of an adult animal, living or dead, and altering them to change them into the building block type of cells seen in the womb. So if you're not aware, this isn't health class or anything, but the womb is, the part of the mom where the baby grows. So for humans, that's about 9 months. Other animals, it's much shorter. Some animals, it's a little longer though. But that incubation period, we would call it cloning, womb. You can totally get rid of me here. Rather look at a sheep, I think, wouldn't we? So in 1996, I'm old enough to remember when this was news. Dolly the sheep was the first animal to be cloned by a group of researchers in Scotland. So they took a sheep, took some of its cells, DNA, genes, and I don't know how they do it, but somehow in a lab, they make another one. We'll talk about surrogate moms here in a minute too, but these cells are then placed into the womb of an adult female of that animal called a surrogate mom to grow the clone. The surrogate mom then gives birth to the clone. And so this can happen with humans too. You might have um, women that sometimes they're paid, sometimes they're not, but they know that a couple or maybe a person wants to have a baby, but for whatever reason, they can't. Their womb is not a good place for the baby to develop. So the surrogate mom will say, "Okay, I will take your cells and your stuff. We don't have to get into the health class part, but I will take that, and then the baby can develop in my womb. And then once the baby is delivered, you take back the baby. But I'm going to be the mom, the surrogate mom, that helps the baby grow, helps like the fetus grow. We're not talking about a baby yet, but it's just a little thing, and then it grows for 9 months. It comes out, and then the parents or the the people that have the baby, the genetic material, and it doesn't even have to be their own material. But a surrogate mom basically is not going to be the mom once the baby is born. That will be somebody else. Elizabeth Ann's surrogate mom is a ferret of a different species. So that is possible. There has been talk. I don't know if you know the woolly mammoth. That's an animal that's definitely extinct now, but it's similar to an elephant. So if DNA and genes survive for the woolly mammoth, is it possible to take that DNA and put it into a living elephant now? So the ferrets, even though it's not the same species, they are enough alike that this womb of this ferret is a great place for this other type of ferret to incubate, to develop. How about that? To develop. Cloning is controversial. Not everybody agrees. Not everybody thinks it's a good thing. However, as some say that cloning animals may lead scientists to one day clone humans, which could lead to a lot of different problems. For example, one issue some scientists argue is that the science isn't perfect, and errors in the cloning process could lead to babies with major medical issues or deformities. So let's just talk about deformities for a second. Some scientists are worried that if you start cloning humans, then some of those deformities would be a result just of cloning. Like if they were born in a more natural way, they might not have a third eye. That's a very common example for deformities, but that would be an example of like, oh wow, they have like a third arm, and they might not have had that third arm if they were developed naturally. But then others might argue, well, they wouldn't be here at all if they weren't cloned. So animals is one thing, but then, start cloning people. Some will think, nah, that's just not a good thing. You're messing with too many things that could have some really bad effects eventually. Why this ferret was cloned? Back in 1981, the black-footed ferret species was on the edge of extinction. Oh, look at these. Actually, those are kind of ugly babies. Usually animals are cute, the baby animals, but Elizabeth Ann, I don't know, she's one of these, I guess. Elizabeth Ann, you can't tell. Elizabeth Ann drinks milk from her surrogate mother beside her siblings. They are all a different type of ferret species than Elizabeth Ann. Did they ask if this ferret? Did they ask this ferret, "Hey, is it okay? You're going to be a surrogate mom for a bunch of different animal species." I wonder if she would be happy about that. Looks like I don't think she has a choice. Look at that. She doesn't have a choice. You're the mom now, and you're giving milk. Deal with it. Deal with it. To help the species survive, scientists in Wyoming gathered 7 ferrets from the few that remained to start a breeding program. Since then, thousands of ferrets have been reintroduced into the wild, but they all come from these 7 original ferrets. And these links here, blue, if you get to the article and you want to read more about how endangered animals are being born in the lab, you can click on that. That will take you to another article. Tasmanian devils are back after almost going extinct. Check on that. Because the ferrets all come from such a small gene pool, they're missing something called genetic diversity. Big word, big term. Don't worry, it will be explained. Genetic diversity is important for helping animals fight off disease and other dangers that could harm their species. So the great thing about genetic diversity in a species is that it will ensure the species continues to survive. So luckily, coronavirus took out, unfortunately, a lot of people last year. 250,000 Americans. But let's say, and I mean, it's kind of true with coronavirus. Luckily, it wasn't so bad. I mean, people died, but, like not 90% of the population. So what you want, if a new virus or something comes along, the species wants to have enough diversity that if this virus kills off a certain part of the population, there will be another part of the population that is immune to whatever is coming through. That's why genetic diversity is so important. And what they're saying is if, there was some kind of, it could be a virus in ferrets or some kind of environmental change or something, that all of these animals pretty much have the same DNA, they could be wiped out really quickly because of this virus. A little bit like the coronavirus. Luckily, like I said, our coronavirus, this one, yes, it did kill a lot of people, but we're talking a small percentage. For our species, it was not devastating. Humans will continue to survive because of that that virus. Wasn't as harmful as it could have been. But that little ferret is cute. Think of it this way. Say you're on a team of 7 people trying to take down a dragon. You each bring a unique combat skill, but the dragon breathes fire, and none of you know how to overcome the flames. But if you brought in an 8th person, there's a chance they've fought fire-breathing dragons before, and their knowledge could mean the difference between life and death. Elizabeth Ann could be this 8th person. Platypuses just got weirder, turns out. They glow in the dark. I mean, I might want to click on that after. Her genes come from a ferret named Willa who died in the 1980s and whose cells were frozen in case they might come in handy in the future. Elizabeth Ann brings a new gene pool into the mix, and lead researcher Ben Novak says that once she and her kids are introduced into the wild, they'll increase the genetic diversity of the species and make the species better at surviving dangers in the wild. Now, that little ferret's getting a little cuter. Before, when it was all pink, now, a little cuter. Lead researcher Ben Novak holds Elizabeth Ann just after she was born, 2020. Here's another article you may want to read. Flower or bug? Turns out Animal Crossing's orchid mantis is a real thing. So it sounds like part flower, part praying mantis. For now, the technique used to clone Elizabeth Ann could help other endangered species, like a Mongolian wild horse that was cloned last summer and born at a Texas facility. Do you like this story? You know what? Do I love it? Let's just say love. I'm between yes and a love it. Oh, look it. Meh. I don't know. Good. It looks like a lot of people like this story. Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. Now, just before we leave here, something to think about. What if, and I don't think the DNA survives, but what if a dinosaur could be cloned? Like if you've ever seen Jurassic Park, you know how badly that turned out in some of the movies. But is it possible? Like that woolly mammoth I talked before, I actually think, man, I heard at one time it was possible. So what animals could be brought back that became completely extinct? Something to think about. Hope you enjoy this one. If you have any questions, of course, let me know.